I guess my next thing that I wanted to talk about was up a little bit more. So what about homelessness or losing jobs? And I know that a lot of homeless youth are within the LGBTQ community, at least here in the US. I think it was like 40% or something, like it's super high. And whether that's family disowning you and kind of kicking you out of your home or other reasons why, that seems to be a big problem too. So what are some coping mechanisms for that?
I mean, again, like, I can't really comment because I'm only really share my lived experiences of my own situation. So I've not had personal experience with like at least homelessness anyway, and I've not ever lost a job, but I have left jobs. But I think luckily when that had happened, I was still living at home at the time. I think it does come back. I think sometimes with jobs, again, is the kind of personal responsibility thing to a point where, especially if like you get fired like out of nowhere, it's like, hey, again, I did my best, but also sometimes you do need to challenge that, like in case it is you got fired because you're LGBT or, you know, some sort of like discriminative act.
And you need to be smart about that. I feel like you need to kind of, if you aren't good at your job and that's why you got fired, then you kind of need to own up to that.
Yeah, and I think like it's a tough thing, so that you can never really know people's true intentions unless they say so, but you can kind of pick things up sometimes.
So I guess the three things that I had here was first grounding yourself, doing a grounding exercise when things get super stressful. You know, maybe you lost your job, but you still have a home to go to and kind of reset and reapply for jobs. And so grounding yourself might be the first thing. And I actually have a couple of different ones. So I don't know, I guess you can tell me which one you think is a better one. But the shorter one is picking one thing that is in your surroundings and describing it in complete details. So describe the color, describe what you think it tastes like, use all of your senses to describe one item and really ground yourself to where you are. The second one is this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. I don't know if you've heard of this one, but so basically you start off and you take a couple of deep breaths, then you think about 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste in the moment or something that you like the taste of, and then a couple more breaths to kind of really bring yourself back down and emotionally ground yourself a little bit. So what do you think of those exercises?
Yeah, I think the like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is quite a popular one. Like that's often kind of used over here as well. I think it's very individual because I think like especially if you have sensory issues, for example, you might find that might make you worse because you're focusing on more sensory stuff, especially if it's using all the senses, and sometimes that can be re-triggering. But I think it's kind of finding, because in recovery, looking like what you like when you're well, or like what does help you, like is there a certain food you like where, like, you know, that sensory thing can help? Because you're like, okay, I like the taste of dairy milk chocolate, or like a spicy crisp or something. But I think also, again, it could be that music, even just like blankets and things as well. I found that's been quite helpful for me recently, is kind of just having a blanket over myself and feeling something quite soft. So I think sometimes it's like, again, I think the trouble is I notice it is always very individual. So I try not to generalize. It's trying to work with the individual and kind of seeing, like, asking them what has helped them before.
And I like that you talk about each individual sense and amplifying that sense, because, like, for example, I actually realized I can't smell, not because of COVID, but I've never been good at smelling. So
same.
Right, this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise in terms of smells, well, I don't really have a favorite one. And I never have. So you're right. I feel like in terms of that, it wouldn't necessarily work. You know, sitting on the couch and watching, you know, mindless movies might. That, I guess, the blanket, the warmth, and having that, and then the sight and the movie would help. So kind of
that's things. I think like for me sometimes it is like, because I obviously like we're on Discord about video games, so that could be a thing for me, just like playing my Switch and just grinding a few levels or something, or doing something quite monotonous. Yeah. But sometimes like that helps to kind of be like, oh, I'm just doing this thing. And I think so I do like my kind of colourful RPGs. I think that's the sensory things, like looking at nice bright colours. And so I'll put my Switch on and put like Pokemon, or I really enjoy the Atelier series, like that's very relaxing.
And you just beat one, right?
I think I circled back to Riser and ended up finishing. So
I feel you there, especially with like the grindy games or the ones with like life simulation where you have to invest like a month of your life to beat. It's good to up and play and then put it back down.
Yeah, I mean the trouble is because like I love Animal Crossing, but because I got the Switch OLED, it resets your playtime. So I'm like, it looks like I've not been on it at all. So, but like also at the moment I'm feeling quite restless. I think I'm at a point of recovery where it's like, I don't know what to do with myself. So now I'm like, maybe I could just restart Animal Crossing. That's a new start, right? Without actually having to do anything. I think this is the other thing as well, like with stigma with things like video games, for example. People are like, oh, you're playing a video game for 5 hours a day, you're addicted. But you wouldn't say that about somebody that's read a book an entire day.
Right.
Like, I feel like there's kind of certain things people have stigmas against, or video games make you violent. I'm literally playing Animal Crossing. I'm watering flowers. Again, that kind of what works for individuals, I think.
That's such a good point. We do stigmatize video games. So you're right, it can be, I mean, it's expensive and it's an expensive hobby. Listen, don't get me wrong. It is. You gotta, I mean, a book is like what, $2 used?
I mean, yeah.
A video game is like my credit limit. Like,
yeah, because me and my partner actually went to a car boot sale this morning, and like we found quite a few stores that had video games. But even people selling old games are still quite expensive. Like they were still selling like DS games for like 10 quid. And I'm like, that's at least 15 years old.
Yeah. But that makes it more expensive.
Because I think that's the thing, that I wanted to get the Atelier Dusk trilogy, but that's really expensive, so you'd have to get it on PlayAsia, I think. And it's really expensive on there because of like shipping and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I think this thing, I think I've realised that video games are helpful, but it is a very expensive hobby, or sometimes time consuming. But also what I'll find, I've done it a few times with some games where I'll play it for a bit, I'll get bored, I'll trade it in, then I want to play it again. Then I'll buy it again, at the same point, and then trade it in again.
Right.
Especially with Nintendo games. I always find it's Nintendo games where they're always quite expensive.
I love Pokemon cards, so that's why I make the videos. That is my de-stressor, is opening them. And I know that so I checked out your channel for a little bit, and you seem to you did the same thing, I feel like a few years ago too, where you open the cards up, and just that physically opening the packs and like organizing the cards and then taking out your binder and having that is so it's so de-stressful.
I think like what you said about the Pokemon cards, so one of my friends, she actually started a Pokemon card opening channel. She stopped now, but like she recognized, she was like, okay, she likes doing it, but it meant spending more money. And then also, and I think especially when you do content, sometimes it's like, oh, people want to see this video, blah, blah, and it starts to not become fun, because if you're forced to do something, it's not going to be authentic, or it's not going to be fun.
Exactly.
Which is another thing I think with like stress and stuff, is like, you know, if I think when you people please, you're constantly doing things for other people, then you get burnt out. But also sometimes what will happen is that like you will do things for people and then you start resenting them for doing the stuff you were doing. It's been on both sides though, where like I have had people where they will offer something to me and then they'd kind of bitch to their friends about the thing they offered, about me accepting that offer. And I'm kind of like, well, don't offer then if you don't want to do it.
Because you want to sound polite. Exactly.
Or like they'll do like truths where they'll be like, or like they'll kind of twist it in a way to make them look like a nice person and then make me look like the asshole. And I'm like, are you going to tell them the rest of the story here or not?